This episode is sponsored once again by Arcat. Thanks, Arcat. It's spring, which means it's time for growth, renewal, and adjustment. But we're not just talking about your failed New Year's resolution. We're talking about building products. Manufacturers are removing, adjusting, and adding products on their catalogs to meet the standards of an evolving industry.
That means your old CAD, BIM, and specifications might need updating. Luckily, Arcat works with manufacturers to get their newest information online, so you know you are getting the latest and greatest from building product companies.
Best of all, the data is free for you to browse and download. You don't have to even register, so check out arcat.com. That's ARCAT.com. The next time you need the latest building product information. So, what do we talk about today?
We're talking about 5D BIM. I want scratch and sniff BIM. Oy, oy, oy. All right, let's do this. So we're going to continue to talk about the stuff we haven't talked about. I would like to get to the point where we're talking, and maybe we can merge the two things about tool making, because I feel like that's probably a good place to at least want to get to. I don't know if we need to get there today, but because a lot of the tools are so open that you can make your own tools in them, right? Like Grasshopper, like Dynamo, like that kind of thing.
Sure. I'm only going to provide opinion
because I think
know
we could
much about them.
Well, we talk about some of these other things like test fit or real-time rendering, which, and I don't know, Neil, like right. What at your firm, are you guys using anything techie that you want to talk about?
So are you creating drawings in your office, Neil?
No, not anymore.
So you don't.
I mean, I haven't because all my
anymore,
projects
are
under
manage
construction.
But I mean,
right now, but that'll probably change this summer. And I will say this, we do have unique challenges in how we use something like any BIM model tool, whether it's Revit or any other application, is that, BIM in and of itself is meant to model buildings. And so like a project you were just showing us, Cormac, perfect example. You have a building, you can model that building, you can do all this stuff. Evan, same thing for you. You're doing a school. You do that school or whatever project it might be. For us, we're doing residential units where we may have a 4, 5, 6-story building that's 3 stories or 4 stories of wood over a podium type of thing, but it's got it has multiple units inside. So it's like we build, the challenge we have is these units all repeat. So you model this unit and you've got to repeat it all around because, I mean, it's like building a hotel, right? Is essentially what we're doing.
Well, we did an 8-story student housing tower that's podium with steel construction on top. And I mean, it's just like AutoCAD. You can do, they're all blocks, right? Like they're all Revit files and you can swap them out, and I don't think that
you do the same thing.
You can do any building in Revit. It doesn't matter what size it is.
Yeah, I mean our largest ones is student
it's not
housing.
Yeah,
and so we do tons of student housing.
Yeah, that's one. Okay, so I mean those are probably similar in that respect, but The challenge we have is that the units don't always match up perfectly with the outside. In other words, you can have windows changing, stuff like that. So I don't know how you guys handle that, but that's a bit of a challenge. So I think one of the ways they've been doing it is they'll build the units without the exterior wall, and then the exterior wall is like a separate model. It's a separate file so that you can have the windows on the outside be in different locations. Otherwise, everything just repeats everywhere. So you do that. I'm just not sure how we're actually doing it yet.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's all how you set up the everything.
Oh, yeah. And it's a trial and error process, right? I mean, you can kind of conceptually try and figure out how to do it. and then you have to do it and then make some errors. Oh, that doesn't work. And then, so it's a process every firm has to go through.
Yeah.
So
there was the comments on Entree Architect. They were talking about how they were frustrated with like the quality of the models and stuff that they were getting from people that and they're just like, I just don't think Revit's, good enough. And I mean, you could say Revit, you can install whatever word, Vectorworks, ArchiCAD, whatever.
program.
And, so that's always when I always pull out the Troxel quote by Garbage In, Garbage Out. The information that you get out of models, the way that you assemble them and everything else is only as good as the information that you put into it. And, you gotta that's why I firmly believe at least in the delivery process of things, the old way of thinking, the old way of billing where it's, let's just say 25% SDs, 25% DDs, and then the 50% CDs, that model literally needs to flip to, you need to spend more time. It needs to be almost like 40, and then 20, because really the 20% is just documenting the stuff that you've developed, like really modeled out and then developed it all out. So I think design development should really be where the details and everything are flushed out, and then really just spend a small portion of time developing details, developing the information, making sure that your information that you're showing on the documents corresponds with what you're showing in the specifications. But we really got to spend more time up front doing that because, so for like if you're making modules out of these things, if you spent more time actually assembling the module, and, then I don't want to really call it plug and play, but if you do like a plug and play type, method, then the modifications are going to be that much easier because you've got more detail, more information. And so if it swaps, if you like stretch a floor plan or you flop it around and stuff like that, it makes it a little bit, I'm just speaking from my own experience, it would make it a lot easier for you than having to kind of basically restart or like do this extensive modifications to it, because you have your roots there, you have the seeds already there, and then all you got to do is just kind of like do it as fit to the site kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, I could go on and on. Honestly, seriously, I could go on and on because like we're talking about right now how I've got three different steps of partition reordering that I have to document for just the demolition process. Like I've got partitions to demo a certain area for a path. Then I've got to take those down, and then I've got to put up dust collection or dust control partitions, and then let them do their demolition work. And then like the finished product of the demolition takes all of the dust collection partitions down and then puts infection control partitions up. Now I've got to like document and show all of these, and they're all phased out. And so I've got to, create phases in my model to turn on and turn off the phases, depending on the construction process, the construction sequence, make sure all of those things are documented, shown, all that. But that takes time. That takes a lot of effort up front that we always are trying to save to the end. And it just makes no sense.
Right.
So it goes back to the whole
well,
Evan's.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it just goes back to your lovely comment that I use more often than I can think of the garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, you like to take shortcuts, right? Everybody wants to take shortcuts, and shortcuts end up biting you in the ass in the end because it's like we said the last one, we put more into the models now than we ever did before. That's not going to change, I don't think.
No, it's going to if we
go more.
Exactly, if we start to move further and further away from the 2D document or the 2D delivery, and move more into the model-based delivery process and model-based construction, it's going to be so much bigger. People will scoff at like, ha, I've got a 40 gig model. I'm like, really? That's it? You know, you're going to have a 400 gig model. You're going to have a terabyte model soon, depending on the size of your project.
Well, let's get going here. Let's do this.
Aren't we already going?
Are we? You tell me.
We could be.
What are we talking about?
Stuff.
New tech. New tech.
This.
All of this. I think this is still good. We can.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think, Neil, that, just to kind of throw fuel on the fire here, is that most of the time, and this is just what it sounds like to me, is the new technology that's out there is forcing a paradigm shift in the thinking and the approach, but we bring so much baggage to the problem of how we've solved it in the past that we always try to apply that to the new way. So
exactly,
when you're talking about the way you used to do it, here's how we used to do it, and so you're still totally thinking like that, and you're trying to apply that to a new way of doing it that is not designed to do it that way. It's designed to do it a completely different way, which if you can remove yourself and plug yourself into the new way of doing things, you will see the benefit, but it takes time to get to the benefit, which I think is what Cormac is talking about, right? Because it's like you spend more time up front so that you can get the value later. Whereas if we're always looking for, trying to apply the way that we did do it or trying to find some shortcuts, then it actually just, the problems snowball down the road and it gets way harder to do what you want to do. And so I see like new software trying to make an inroad into the way that, our process that we already have. And I think a lot of times we're just getting in our own way, because it's like, well, here, this thing they always promise it can be faster, it can be cheaper, it can be easier, it could be this, or it could be that. But then it ends up not being like that. And we just feel like we're getting burned because we're trying to apply the way we've always done it to this new tool. And a lot of times I think the innovation is happening because there's a completely new approach, and we're not even willing to think about it that way. And generalizing, right? Like the we. Because the innovation is happening because they've removed themselves from the old process, applied a completely new process, but they haven't educated us very well on how to make that leap, either mentally or physically or whatever. So, man, we're still like 3 steps behind and trying to figure out, like you guys are doing 3D drafting. It's what it sounds like. And so when you're actually talking about cabinets and smart objects and being able to schedule them so you can reduce the amount of work that you have to do in the future, does take a completely new way of thinking. And man, that is hard to do in a firm that's been around for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, because there's, I think, a lot of that kind of hesitation in changing the dynamic of how we, go about doing all of this is almost purely wrapped around the way we bill.
Yeah.
Because
totally.
We bill a certain way and that's the way we need to produce.
Right.
But the way we produce now is completely different because we are spending so much time up front. They're like, why is it taking so long for, design development? It's like, well, you're really looking for me to, let's take my current project, for instance. I've got a bunch of context that I need to spend a lot of time having all of that context modeled, having all of that context surveyed, getting point clouds. And then once I get the point cloud, I actually have to do something with that point cloud by creating all of the existing conditions based off of those surveys that I had and making sure that they're right and not just right enough, but right, so that the information that I'm actually able to build off of when I'm building my portion of the site is actually correct, instead of just it's close enough.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're saying there's like, and this doesn't go for every firm, but larger firms, you have an accounting department or a billing department, And, business services is over there pushing for, again, the way we've always done it. Here's the contracts we've always used. There's an efficiency in that. And then you also have it, I don't know about you guys, but for us, most of the time, the contract's driven by the client anyway. It's not our contract, it's their contract.
Right.
And
exactly.
they don't do what we do. And we're not, the connection to our firm is business services, or maybe it's even a PIC, right? But they're also the ones who don't do the work. So they don't understand necessarily, unless they're really hands-on and involved with the day-to-day operations of how you're going to tackle the problem, to be able to inform the client and the contract early on, before the project starts, of how you're going to tackle the problem, because we don't even understand the problem yet, right? So, man, talk about catch-22s and chicken and egg and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you're really talking about attacking a problem at so many levels with so many different people involved, and nobody is communicating at the level at which they kind of need to. Like, you almost want to take business services and the accountants and the contract writers from the client side and the internal side and have them sit with a project team to actually understand how you're doing it today, which doesn't guarantee how you're going to do it on the next project, right? It's so complicated.
Yeah.
I mean, could you do that? Could you put them sitting side by side and actually get any osmosis to happen between? Are they just so wrapped up in their own world? Is everybody so wrapped up in their own world that will never happen?
I would venture to guess that right now everybody's so wrapped up in their own world of, like, I've got to keep building. I've got to keep the billing and accounting process going, and then on the client side, they've got, it's not just dedicated to like your one single project. They've got other things that are going on,
right?
Especially like institutional. The last thing that they really care about or think about is the contract that we have between us, to a point, obviously, but and then there's just all the different layers. You're right, that just don't seem to understand from the trench aspect what goes into the creation of things. I mean, I start thinking about how quickly people are expecting, just to kind of keep going with just the software side of things. I mean, how quickly people start to think of, I need a photorealistic rendering pulled together. And, they say, can you pull together some photorealistic renderings? And they think about it, exactly. It's just like, can you, throw this stuff together? And it's like, it's not, I mean, you're only going to get, I mean, sure, you can, there's plenty of like plugins for our BIM softwares out there that can, help, start to crank out photorealistic renderings of things, but they're only going to be as good as the information that you've put in.
Yeah. Well, and I think as architects, we're pretty comfortable making something look like it's going to look like the real thing, even if it's not. Like we're okay with that, right? Like a lot, especially when it comes to renderings, you just model the stuff you see. You don't have to model it all. But man, like when it comes later on down the road and they're like, well, you showed us this before, and now that's not it anymore. It's like, well, we only knew what we knew, right?
I will most certainly say in my old age, where I have become crotchety in promising things that I can't deliver. Mm-hmm. So we were showing an existing elevator lobby in, some really nice finishes and things like that. Some renovations to this larger kind of like ante lobby, and then, elevator lobby, type stuff. And it looked great. We were happy about the design, except for one thing. They were showing, I believe it was a 11-foot ceiling. I'm going to just guess about an 11-foot ceiling. Well, I'm looking at them like, how can this be? How are we showing an 11-foot ceiling? And they're like, oh, we'll just, try to reroute, some existing ductwork and we'll pull it up. I'm like, okay, let's stop for a second. Like, let's start thinking about this. This is an existing structure. The existing floor-to-floor height is 12'8". This is a 6-inch concrete slab with concrete encased steel beams and columns. just that alone is going to be sitting down past our 11-foot ceilings, let alone, any kind of, this one kid, he tries and he does a fantastic job, but his education right now it's slowly getting to the part where you start to click the design and existing conditions together, because you in school we don't live with constraints. And so he cut a section, and there literally was 2 inches between the bottom of the structure and the bottom finish face of the acoustical ceiling that they were showing.
Well, that stuff's only 1/2 inch thick. So
and then he goes,
good. You got an inch and a half.
He's like, see, it works. I'm like, start scratching my head like, how do I explain to you how that doesn't work without just like absolutely losing it? And then
Here are all the ways it does not work.
We walked through, we started talking about things, and he's like, well, how much does it realistically need? Like, realistically, in this kind of a volume? I mean, let's start like backing it up. I was like, you had 6 inches for your plane of your, ceiling and your lights. And then above that, you've got, your fire protection, you've got this. And then, you've got your mechanical system. You got cable trays, you've got all of these other things. And I start like listing all of the different things. He's like, so 2 inches isn't going to work. Like, no, it isn't.
Ding, ding, ding.
Exactly. So, it's just like, and the thing is that, when people, and where all of that was going is when we promise them or we show them these beautiful, like shiny images of, this 11-foot ceiling and this thing's like, oh, that's going to be so great. It just feels more open. Mm. No, it really doesn't, because it can't.
Yep.
And then you just, it's like, so. But
you showed us.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, can't you make it work?
Yeah, it's hard.
Well, I could take this column and this column out, and then the 15 stories above will now be part of your first floor, and we can make it whatever we want.
Yeah.
So it's just I've where I was going with this. Just I need to have more in as part of my ever evolving new position in the profession. It's getting people to understand the design decisions, especially in renovations, because I've been spending a lot of time in the past decade or so dealing with renovations. Especially in renovations, a clear understanding of your existing conditions and a clear understanding of your design intent have to mesh up. They have to be talking to each other, and the designer needs to understand those existing conditions, because if we're promising something and the client attaches to those things and they say, this is what I want, and you can't deliver it, we all look like idiots. We all look like assholes. So that's where
the whole project premise is based on people knowing that information, or right. Coming from the client side, like they've lived there for how many years already, so they have a pretty good understanding. So you do too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's and these are just kind of the real human things that happen on every project, right? And so it's like, well, how fast can you guys get up to speed on this project? How fast can you understand the problem?
So really, I mean, going into a more software approach to that, one of the things that you can do to really understand the existing conditions is, point cloud surveys of the existing conditions and being able to basically map out where everything is, where all of the piping is, where all of, the above ceiling stuff is, where, devices on the walls are, where everything is, that if, say, and I'm speaking from, a renovation aspect of it, because right at this present time, I'm totally living in a renovation project. But I see technology being able to help me out even far more than, like, say, we talked about it in previous shows in the past of the one elementary school that I did in historic Annapolis, Maryland, where there's two historic buildings, but we didn't have any existing conditions. So the entire building was put together based off of field measurements, photographs, and one boundary survey.
It is the old way.
The very old way. And I think about how much easier I would have been able to facilitate that project if, we weren't quite there yet with Point Cloud, but I mean, we are now. But and I think about how much easier, because I had like a 4-inch bust between where the end of my new building and the start of the existing building.
Close enough.
4 inches is huge. And they just say, well, that's your expansion joint. You're like, shit.
Wow.
So,
but yeah, I know what you're saying, but I mean, there's caveats that come along with that, right?
Totally.
I mean, you're not going to spend as much time. I think a lot of times we don't even take the time part into consideration when it comes to these new things, where it's like, well, paint me 2 pictures and show me the one where it's the way we've always done it, and then show me the one where it's the new way, and then show me the one where it's the new way once we know what we're doing. Right? Those are 3 completely different pictures, because if you're talking about field verification, on-site as-builting, that measurements like you're talking about multiple people, multiple days, multiple times because they missed stuff and they didn't.
Multiple return trips.
Right, and so now you got to take travel time into consideration and availability, and then there's like the whole site logistics side of it. When it's a school, when can this happen, and who can be there and who can't be there, and do they have to open it up after hours? Do they got to pay somebody to do that? Are there unions involved? Like, man, talk about, when you're working with a large client like LAUSD or somebody that where all that comes into play, it gets really difficult. But even at the simpler level, you're still talking about sending at least one person out, probably 3 or 4 times to catch all the stuff they didn't catch and to rephotograph, and versus a point cloud where it's like, well, you can send a team of 2 people out and it's gonna take time to do all this scanning, but you're never going to have to go back. Like, let's just say, ideally, you wouldn't have to go back, and then the next time you do it, you're gonna do it even faster, right? Because there is an efficiency to that. I don't know that there's too much efficiency to be gained if you send somebody back to do hand measurements, but you know that there's busts in the measurement, whereas like a point cloud scan, you get within a millimeter. Period.
Right.
Every single time, depending on the technology you're using. But the other caveat is technology that you need to actually handle the data, right?
Right.
Which is huge, right? You're talking about 8 gigabytes of scan data that you then have to be able to link into your Revit model or decimate it down to where you can actually use it and draw on top of it to build the BIM model, because you can't. The point cloud doesn't build a BIM model for you. You got to do it. Somebody's got to do it.
Yeah, I'm totally waiting for that next iteration of
Well,
cloud
it exists.
Technology.
It exists, but they went proprietary with it. It used to be a thing you could just download and use, but now they kind of locked it back up. Excuse me. So, because it is an advantage to the companies that have spent the R&D money to create that software to do that, to be the ones who can do it without having to do it by hand. So there's an investment in technology to handle the amount of data, and then there's just the learning curve that comes with it. Obviously, there's always going to be a learning curve, but it is way more accurate. Like you said, you're not going to be 4 inches off in the end. If you're actually laser scanning, you're not going to be off at all. And you can see exactly how thick every single wall is. And if you scan up in the ceilings, you will see where the piping is. And if you don't, you won't, right? So, but the cool thing about point cloud scanning too let's just call it reality capture, is that they're also taking photographs at the same time, 360 photographs at every location that they do a scan from. So in one window, you can have the photographic information, which is full color. You can zoom in, you can zoom out, you can see all the stuff that was captured in the point cloud, but then you also have the 3D data from that thing. So whenever you're doing an addition or a modernization or whatever, I mean, it's an amazing tool to have access to nowadays. And like you said, back on your Annapolis project, you didn't have, that wasn't even a thing, but now it is. And how many years has that been? Less than 10?
Really, less than 10.
I mean, that's crazy talk, right? I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And now that you just explained some of the other other things that Point Cloud is doing, I'm apparently not using it to my full extent, which would be great to be able to do that, because we just had a meeting just a couple days ago where we were talking about some certain conditions above some elevators, and it's like, oh, well, we could just get rid of the equipment up here and do that, and come to find out that it's inspection equipment for the actual elevators, so you can't get rid of it. But then in turn, we're talking to the client about it, and they're like, I didn't even know that existed. And so, like, even Point Cloud, because we're doing a pretty intensive survey, is letting almost everybody know everything that's going on in their building. And
if you're willing to scan all that stuff. So, if you're going to pop ceiling tiles and there's a bunch of crap up there. And guess what? If you're scanning steel beams, you don't get to see what's behind the steel beam unless you go scan over there. Right. So,
right. You literally got to move around.
You have to be able to have access to everything, and you can't have anything moving ever. Right. So if you're at a school, you're scanning at night and on the weekends when there's no one there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, this one was, in this particular case, it was pretty important for us to scan a lot of these existing conditions because of the fact that it is an operating hospital. It's an in-use hospital, an in-use research facility. You have tons. There's just so many different parts and pieces to this project that still need to maintain operation during the construction process. And so you need to literally know every little detail, just in case so you can't leave anything to chance. You can't say, oh, I didn't know that information because I didn't know that underpinning at this particular location was there. So like with all of the different data, all of the different like as-built drawings that we have for it with the Point Cloud, with site verification and and photographs that we do, and popping our head above the ceilings, which you can't do without a above ceiling permit.
Yeah.
Which I just found out about.
Well, you're not going to see what's underground either, right? So
exactly,
you're just not.
And you hope. Although what's interesting is they're demoing a building out of the way that will eventually be part of our project. And this building had been there since 1905, and now they're, demoing the building. And there was apparently a building that was there prior to the 1905 building that what did they do? They left the foundations in place.
Wow.
And built over the top of it.
Shortcut.
So not only are we dealing with the old building, we're dealing with the older building.
Wow.
Ouch.
Yeah. Which, those are always fun surprises. I mean, yeah, those are really fun surprises.
Yeah, man. I
say that facetiously.
Yeah, fun in your air quotes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so visualization is huge, right? That's what we're talking about with this Point Cloud stuff. You're talking about the ability to basically have existing with new right on top of each other. One of the other cool uses of reality capture is during construction, where you could go through and scan a building while it's going up at some phase and make that data available to the client afterward so that they can see what's in the walls, right? Facilities management loves that kind of thing. But again, they kind of have to have the technology in place to be able to utilize it too. So, that's a fantastic use, though, right? Like you could just do that with photography too. You could go in there with an Insta360 or a Theta, a 360 capturing camera and just walk through and put together, kind of a floor plan based walkthrough of 360 panoramas, and they can actually see in the walls, before the gyp goes up or whatever, and see where the hot lines are and the cold lines are and the whatever they're looking for depending on the type of building, and then just make that available to them. It doesn't have to be 3D data. It can be 2D, but it can be photographic, and that can still be super useful.
I actually did that a couple times, which now that now that you say that, I don't think that I ever really turned over those photographs.
Well, a lot of
But,
times you'll do photographs, but you don't know, like, it's so foreign of an environment, the construction environment. So it's
no,
like,
I did like
which direction were you
360.
looking in?
Yeah, I did 360 stuff, but I mean, never really like pinned it back to a floor plan to kind of help, navigate some of those things. They were more like, ooh, I've got a 360, capture on my phone, and let me try it out and see how, interesting it is, and then go back and then show people in the office, just like, check out what's going on in the project.
Yeah, so if you like, Ricoh has what's called the Theta camera, and then there's the Insta360, which seems to be kind of the rage right now, because it captures a whole 360-degree environment in one picture, and then the software, it basically gets rid of the selfie stick, which is cool because you could stick this thing up in a ceiling and you don't even have to have a ladder to do it. You can it comes on like a 3-foot pole or whatever, and you can navigate through a 360-degree environment very easily.
Interesting.
And so it's fast. I mean, that's really the key, is that it's fast. You're just going through taking regular pictures. They also shoot video, which is awesome. And obviously that video looks really distorted, but when it stitches it together, I mean, it does all this on device, you get to pick where you want to look. So if you're walking down a hallway with this thing recording video, and then you're playing it back later, you can walk down the hallway and see what the person who recorded it saw, or you can just change the direction and look around as if you're in a moving 360-degree spherical panorama, which is a lot of data. I mean, that's a lot of useful data.
Oh, absolutely.
If you marry up like the 360 photos with a service like roundme.com, you can actually upload a floor plan and place the nodes on there, and then hand that over to a client and say, take a tour of your building, right? It's all super easy to use. So things like that, I think, are fantastic uses of new technology, especially for us on the visualization side of the projects that we're doing. And by us, I mean architects, right? Like roundme.com is a website that a lot of photographers use to show off their 360 panoramas, that they can create tours of buildings. But for architects, like, you show off your project before it's done, right? I mean, and it's a really easy to use interface. People really like it, so it's pretty cool. I mean, you have to pay. Like, they have a free tier, but then if you do a paid tier, you can actually upload a floor plan and link the nodes together, so people can see where they are in the building and start to get an idea of their surroundings a little bit better. Than have some more context than just standalone 360 panos.
Oh my Lord. Okay, so I'm looking at these. I of course went and clicked on it, and I'm looking at just some of the tutorials, and they've got some exterior shots of the night sky, with both a time lapse and then 3D, and it's just got this absolutely amazing. It's almost looks like a meteor shower of stars.
Right.
God, it's so incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it really takes this stuff to the next level. Really
That's cool. A link we need to most certainly include in the show notes, because this is just gorgeous.
Yeah, and so think about it from your project perspective, right? And what can you do? What can you show people? I mean, the cool thing with panorama rendering like this too is that you don't have to be constrained to where a normal person can stand, right? You could put a camera anywhere in 3D space and render a 360 spherical panorama with any piece of software that they all do it now, Enscape or Lumion, or it doesn't matter,
right?
And you load that into here, and you're standing 30 foot up on a facade of a building looking around at it, because it's more information. Think about it from an information gathering point of view rather than a human perspective point of view or a tour point of view. It can be really useful in a lot of different ways. Like, imagine yourself as a drone flying around the building, right? That could be useful for somebody to understand what you're trying to communicate with them.
Well, speaking of drones, as part of just the surveying and stuff like that, I mean, we are employing drones to basically fly around and do like exterior assessments of the building, so we can find out where, if it's 15 stories up and we can't really get to it, from anything. And even with like me swapping out lenses and getting a zoom lens on my camera, sometimes I can't quite get to certain vantage points to really kind of see and understand whether or not like existing conditions are in good shape or bad shape or things like that. And to be able to document stuff like that real time with, photos and videos is just, it's becoming such, the information that we're able to gather on existing conditions now is just unreal and amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like you can go out with a drone and just by capturing photos, you can build a model from that. So you can stitch all that together. Use the technical term is photogrammetry. So you can basically stitch together images that are taken from different points of view to derive 3D data out of that. And it's not like gnat's ass accurate, but it's within an inch or two.
But it's also helpful.
Oh, it's super helpful, right? Because it's like, well, how helpful is Google Earth to you, right?
Google Earth. So a perfect example is, I go to Google Earth during the middle of a meeting, and we're talking about taking out some existing window units on a mid-rise tower, because we're building our building right up against it, and we've got to take, a bunch of these things, a bunch of existing, HVAC systems out, and they're just like, well, I don't know if it's really there. So you pull it up, and you're just like, yeah, it's right here. Oh, that's what you're talking about. Okay, great.
Yep. Pictures.
Or, and especially if you're in an area where they've done, like the 3D modeling of it, or, you can switch to a 3D mode in, Google Maps or on Google Earth, and you're able to see and twist around like a building. So like mine, you can 360 pano this thing. You can, zoom in pretty close to seeing all of the existing conditions, as long as they're up to date. And, you're able to like fully capture what's going on and have the conversations with them, because the most important thing that comes out of tools like these are the conversations about, whether or not something, we didn't have certain things in the scope because nobody realized that they were there. And so the client's like, oh yeah, we definitely want to get rid of that, so let's modify the scope so that we can include that.
Yeah.
Like, okay. Yeah. So those of all of those conversations that, cause it's just like in the old days, we'll go back to in my time, you basically used to say, okay, so think about that room, picture this room, and if you think, on this north wall you have this, and on this, but you're asking them to think about something, and instead with point clouds, with the what is the official term, the reality capture, or
yep.
So and with drones and with the 360 and all of this other stuff, you don't have to ask them to picture. You literally can show them, this is what I mean. That electrical panel right there, we got to do something with it, because it's going to be, once we remove the rest of this room, it will now be on the exterior, but it's feeding an existing space. So we got to think about that, but that was not part of the scope. So we've got to now add that to the scope of things. And everybody's like, oh yeah, we got to do that. Not speaking from experience, but
no, of course
speaking from experience.
I think one of the most interesting things about drones too is that they can actually capture data beyond just what something looks like. So through the use of like infrared and I don't want to get too technical on it, but you can actually study an area for its hydrology, for how much moisture content there is in the plant life, like what types of plants there are based on the coloration of them, and so it's really, you were talking about the amount of data that can be captured. It goes beyond the image when it comes to this stuff. So if you've got a large site, you've got a lot of acreage that you need to cover, maybe you need to do a study of what exists on that site, what is the ecosystem that we're going to be disturbing potentially.
Right.
You can actually do a lot of that from the air and very quickly have a much better understanding of what you're dealing with. I think that's pretty amazing stuff. Or you could even, you can get enough 3D geometry data out of it so that you can overlay your building into that and have it kind of match up, have it marry together and match up the perspective so that you could see what the development is going to look like on the site in a very accurate way, very early on, because you can derive all that 3D data from it. So there's a lot of neat development going on in that space for sure. And I mean, there's really cool software that lets you control the flight patterning and what's the best time of day to do it, and we can fly the same pattern over and over and over again. We could create a time lapse of during construction based on that. I mean, there's a lot of neat things you can do to tell a story even after the fact with that kind of thing. Or OSHA, for instance, is even using drones to make sure that construction safety is happening properly, right? So using like machine learning to analyze the video and see that the guardrails are up there on that top floor on the roof, making sure that people are wearing safety vests, making sure that people are wearing hard hats. And it's interesting, right? Like this whole what other types of data are coming out of this kind of stuff beyond just let's just get up there and shoot a video. I mean, it's way past that.
How do we make money at this?
Well,
with all this stuff and data,
it adds a lot more value
at
right?
the end.
It adds a lot more value, and I think that's where firms like I had this guy come into my class when I was teaching it, who is a civil engineer, and he would come in and talk about how they were early on to realize that they could offer this as a service, and so they invested in getting their pilot's license for the drones, and they invested in the software because it's not cheap, and the early adopters get to steer the direction of the software development because they're working hand in hand with them and getting what they need out of it. So now they're offering visualization services for developers, and they're offering these things. When you're going for your entitlement and you're trying to get the sign off from the city to do this development, and you can show them from the air what this thing's going to look like in a very accurate way, and you could show the phasing of the building over time to show the impacts of how it's going to. What's going to happen to the neighbors and how are their views going to be impacted. And you can do all that and offer that as a service and be a value added partner during this process. So I think I like where you're going with that, because I think that is a question you have to ask, because at some point, like right now, when people ask for renderings, every week, right? When a client asks for updated renderings, that used to be an ad service, and now it isn't. So I think part of it is being an early enough adopter to where it can be an ad service, and then using that money to invest in that technology. But at some point, I think a lot of these, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on which side of the table you're on, they end up becoming part of the way we do business. And they aren't necessarily an ad service. But man, if you're not doing internal R&D and trying to figure out how to do that stuff and how to capture it, and then later on when the client just expects it, and then you're like, well, how are we going to pay for this? And they're like, well, the other architects we work with don't charge us for this because they already know how to do it, and it's not a big deal, and it's easy for them because they invested it early on to do that kind of thing. I think that is kind of a struggle that we're all dealing with on some level.
And I would even venture to say that I would guess that they are actually charging for it, but they're charging for it in a way where they already know what, they've done it enough where they've lost money enough early on that, now it's just part of their, delivery services, and they may not itemize it out, they may, let's just say, pre-visualization, and stuff like that, and just kind of roll it into, say, the, conceptual design phase or the schematic design phase to be able to, include all of that stuff in there. So back to your point, Neil, I mean, early on, as you know, we give away a lot of our services, but you're absolutely on point with thinking, how do we make money off of this stuff? And so when you start to see, when we're able to sell that value to our clients, then, and make them understand that we couldn't have been able to deliver the project. I mean, we could have probably been able to deliver the project, but maybe not at the highest level that they were that we could achieve with this data collection or drone photography or whatever else. Now they're starting to see that, so now we're able to start like actually billing that in and putting that as part of the process. So we factor in that as the delivery method, and we make money off of it finally.
And at some point you don't anymore. But like, I guess my point is, let's just say, the project demands computational design to do something, whether it's in the programming phase or in the actual facade design or whatever it is. I mean, how do you charge for computational design?
But I mean,
don't. You don't.
Or
it's part of how you
don't.
It's part of how you solve the problem. It's a tool you have in the tool bag. And I guess my point is, if you've never done computational design, man, you're kind of screwed. You're going to be doing it by hand, and it's going to take you a lot longer.
Yes.
And so again, if you're kind of just always sitting back and taking if the client's not going to pay for this, we're not going to do it attitude, which I totally get. Like, that is a valid way to do it for sure. But if you're not pushing yourself to progress and do this kind of stuff, one day you are still not going to be doing that stuff. And then what?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and then you're going to be competing against people who are doing that.
And it's just part of their service.
Exactly. And are delivering a much, much better product. And you're going to get beat out by them. And you're just not going to be, you won't be their client or their architect. The other guy will.
Neil, have you guys...
So, Evan, what sort of tools are you using to do computational design? What's involved in that? First, for our listeners, just explain a little bit about what computational design is.
Well, computational design, or let's just call it computation, is any time that you basically have a set of constraints that you can test against by building the software to do what you want it to do. So we all know that the software that we use doesn't do everything we want all the time, right? But I think what's kind of the most exciting thing about the main software platforms out there for BIM and for design, they have open APIs which allow you to go in and make it do what you need it to do. So while they might not deliver every bespoke tool for every possible type of architecture firm out there, they do give you the ability to create your own tools within it. And I think this is just kind of one of the meta topics that I wanted to talk about, was just tool making. because not everything exists, right? So when you're talking about computational design or design computation in just like generically, you're talking about any time that you're going to be using data or a set of rules or a set of constraints to inform the design of whatever the thing is. So it could be the layout of a facade. It could be the layout of a bathroom. It really, like, there's no way to really nail it down to a particular approach or outcome. It really is like you can use it for anything. And I think a lot of people think about, when they hear that, they think, what do you guys think? I guess that'd be a good question. When you hear the words computational design, what kind of architecture or what do you think of?
For me, I always I think of it as data and information design or driven design. I mean, you're
any
using...
particular style of architecture come to mind when people talk about computational design?
Modern.
I think a lot of people think like Zaha, right?
I was going to say more
Swoopy.
like like I don't know if I'm using the term parametric, right?
Yeah,
But I mean,
yeah.
just more like more Frank Gehry, Zaha, these more like fluid and swoopy shapes, or the shapes that you otherwise wouldn't be able to create if it wasn't for the computational design.
Yeah. So, and I think where it really starts to make sense is that you could use any tools to make those shapes. Like you could make those shapes in SketchUp. You could hand draw those shapes. You could draw them in AutoCAD. It doesn't matter, right? But what computational design actually allows you to do is you said the word, they're parametric, and because there are parameters when you're talking about parametric design or design computation, you're putting in inputs that are driving the shapes. And so while computational design is just not about form making, I think one thing that it does do really well is it makes weird shapes fabricatable. And so that's the key change in the sentence. Is like a lot of people think it makes weird shapes. Actually,
So
it makes weird shapes fabricatable, because those wouldn't be real buildings if you couldn't kind of distill them back down into their most basic elements and make something real out of them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so what you're saying is it makes weird possible. So I'm a computational human.
Yes. Terminator.
To distill it down to
so
understandable.
I mean,
no,
and that's just one aspect.
It totally makes sense. And yeah, I mean, because you think about it, you just like, you look at these and you're like, how the hell are you able to do that? I mean, if you were an automotive designer and, you looked at some of these, old swoopy shapes and things like that, of the way things, were. And I speak from a little bit of experience. My wife's grandfather ran the model shop at Ford and, created a lot of the iconic cars out of the clay modeling and all of that other stuff. But you did that over and over, and you kind of, you still took your measurements off of it and all that other stuff, but you created these designs. So you almost like worked backwards from, versus the way that we do it now, whereas you can create it all in the computer. You can create all of these shapes and all these swoopy designs, but then you can create the fabrication process out of it. So it's kind of like working backwards, or working in reverse from the way things were to achieve a similar design aspect to the way we can now. Is you can test it multiple times, in the computer to make sure it works, and make sure that, you've got your panel joining right, and all of these other things that, because I mean, I think I started to be in a very loose, kind of ignorant way, starting to understand computational design when we sat down and we were talking with Shop, and they were talking about how they basically designed the Barclay Center in this particular fashion, and had to go through the whole test fitting and all that other stuff, and then sat down with the contractors, and they were just like, well, how are we going to fix this? It's like, well, easy. See the way that we design this in the computer, and you got these 5 little bolt holes, and you align those 5 little bolt holes with those little things right there, and you just screw it in, and boom, you're done. And they're like, is it really that easy?
Well, yeah, they didn't believe them, right?
Exactly.
Until they trust us. Yeah.
You're like, well, but I mean, and so that, and again, is, you'd said is as early. I mean, we are, in the early phases of this, and it takes a lot of, it's going to take a lot of effort to get past the skepticism of it. But the more and more we do it, the more and more people are going to start to trust that, okay, we've really thought through all of this stuff. Give us the opportunity, give us the chance, and you're going to be able to have swoopy buildings.
Well, and I don't,
making the
and
weird
it doesn't even have to. It doesn't have to be that at all, right? It's so data is data, and data doesn't care if it's straight or if it's curved. And I think one of the things that we're really talking about is the ability to base the design on data. So when you're talking about making architecture performative, when you're talking about the facade needs to do this exact thing to keep the heat and the glare off of the space inside, you can actually prove that it does that by doing this kind of modeling. And so it's not just about shapes, but it's also about performance, and it's also about
right.
model interoperability, right? Like if you design it in this piece of software and you want to push it through to that documentation software, this visual coding that you can do can make that happen so that you don't have to redraw the model again later if you can't, or if you don't want to. So there's definitely a lot of neat ways to describe it and a lot of neat things that it can do, but it really comes down to, like, is your firm ready to adopt that kind of thing? And a lot of times the answer is no. It's scary, it's new, it's weird, it's why are you doing programming? You should be drawing right now. And it's like, well, if I figure this out now, we'll be able to use it on every single project after this, and we'll never have to draw that thing again, right?
Do you think, real quick, that some of the firm's hesitations stem back to kind of my speculation of client hesitations, or just how do you monetize that?
Well, I think so. If
I know it's multifaceted.
It takes somebody
issues and stuff.
It takes somebody to do it and show, right? You got to show it. But I think if you show a value that says we're using this stuff to make decisions, which is what architecture is all about, right? How do we get from these really loose sets of inputs that we actually have to synthesize into a real building? How do we get down that decision tree and actually make decisions based on whatever inputs we've got, whether they're client inputs, code inputs, agency inputs, internal architectural inputs, environmental, all these things? How do you actually make decisions? And I think that's where things like this actually help, and they do add value, is they say, well, if we can build a tool, or if a tool already exists that helps us decide something now based on the best information we have in a much faster way than we've ever been able to do it before, there's your value.
Right. No, I wasn't really. I was just trying to, I guess, figure out why there's so much hesitation from firms out there when the value of being able to do this expands the value
that they offer,
and that each firm can offer. I mean, if you basically are telling people that I can make your building better based off of all of the data input and all of these different tools that I have at my disposal, I mean, why not position yourself to be an industry leader rather than kind of the old-fashioned old way of doing things? I mean, it just makes more sense. It's just like if you're trying to convince let's just say you're trying to convince a client to use a different, like, rain screen system that they've never used before, and if you show them basically through all of the different data, not just from product data and stuff like that, but is this design data of how it all fits together, how it all is. I mean, because you can talk about, from my aspect of things, we always talk about things about maintenance, durability, whether or not is this cleanable. I mean, yeah, that's maintenance, but anyway, you've got all of these different constraints that they think of, but if you're able to show them how it's used, and I know this is a slight deviation from that, but I mean, you're able to, like, convince people based off of a lot of different information, how to use things better, how that building can become more efficient, how that building will ultimately save them money, and help them drive decisions that makes not only better architecture but also a better performing building as well. So it was a slight deviation from what we were talking about, but not really.
I think one of the neatest things that I've seen come out recently that we're testing is computational design. You need kind of basically, let's just call it visual programming aspect to it. And there's been quite a few players in the market when it comes to that. The most popular one has probably been Grasshopper, which is inside of Rhino. And then there's Dynamo inside of Revit, and there's other software out there like Generative Components and stuff like that. But those are probably the two most popular, Dynamo and Grasshopper. And I think what is one of the most interesting things that's happened in recent months is now is this project called Rhino Inside. And Rhino Inside is, I'll put a link to it in the show notes. But if you go to rhino3d.com/inside, you can actually see that Rhino is running inside of Revit in this particular screenshot. And so the idea is that it allows Rhino and Grasshopper to be embedded into another application. And it could be almost any application. Like you could have Rhino running inside of Excel if you wanted to. You could have it running inside of Photoshop. And so some early development has been happening on getting it running inside of Revit. And I think what's really interesting about that is that now, so you could actually be building a model in your conceptual design application, which would be Rhino, right inside of Revit. And you're not going to be rebuilding that stuff when it gets into Revit because it's actually translating that information into native Revit geometry. So if you're designing your site design, your topography, you can actually turn that into in live, like there's no turning it into, it just shows up in Revit as a live topography model and columns and floors and all that kind of stuff. Now it doesn't do everything because this is a new thing, but eventually like this has huge promise because it'll, like when you're talking about parametric design, when you're talking about constraints that can be changed, because changes always happen, right? We know that changes happen. So Neil, earlier on, you were talking about what happens when you move that one window. Do you have to update it in all the different models? It's like, well, now I can move a slider and it updates in my conceptual design model and in my production environment at the same time in all the models. And to me, that's where things get really interesting because Revit's a great documentation tool. Rhino's a first-class modeling tool, and now you're telling me you can put one inside the other? Like this is going to take a mindset shift, right? Of how do we approach things and why do we do things the way that we do them? Because man, all of a sudden I'm starting to see that there's a better way to do it, which is pretty cool, right? Like that's pretty interesting. So I mean, this is something that we're definitely looking at and investing in because if I don't have to rebuild the model at the start of DD because it was built inside Revit already but using the tools that my designer is comfortable with, that's fantastic, right? Pretty neat development. And so it's putting computational design engine inside another computational design engine, right? It's like, what are the possibilities? I don't think we even know what the possibilities here are yet. It's pretty neat that they're doing that. And so when you start to think about what the team at Rhinoceros has done at McNeil, they actually have removed all of the stuff that gets in between these two programs. It's always been a huge chore to get geometry from one application into another in kind of a live in a live way. It's always been easy just to export and import, but that breaks the system when you do that, right? Like that's a snapshot.
Yeah, and not everything always translates, and
right, and you've got to rebuild it.
You lose information. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so not I don't want to paint like the most rosy picture. Not everything has been solved yet, but it's like the path has clearly been outlined, and it's going to happen, right? So I think that's going to be a potential huge boon for Revit users and whoever. Like I shouldn't keep ArchiCAD out of this because ArchiCAD has had Grasshopper tie-ins for a few years now, where you can actually live link your Grasshopper definitions to your ArchiCAD model as well. So it's really interesting to see kind of the scrappy little upstart called McNeil, who's been around for a long time, but they've always stayed independent, now kind of getting into all these main architectural applications at their bottommost level to really kind of grab a foothold into the design process and really make sure that they stay relevant into the future because, Autodesk, I'm sure they're pissed about this, right?
Sure.
Because it is a competitor, even though they're not at scale or marketing dollars a competitor, but man, like they're a geometry and a process competitor. So it's an interesting shift. Anyway, another one that I don't know if you guys have looked at, Neil. This one I think is right up your alley. Is TestFit? Have you guys looked into TestFit at all? Have you heard about it?
I've heard of it, but it's one of those, you're like, why do we not adopt things? Because you hear about them, but you never really look into them.
Yeah,
that's my problem.
So,
I have heard about this.
Yeah, so it's really aimed at multifamily, and that's why I asked you, because I've talked to the guy who founded it, and his name's Clifton, and he, that's where there's a lot more money in developer stuff than there is in architecture stuff. So, I mean, his clients are not really architects. He's going after the developer crowd, but obviously architects are interested in this because, it's like you asked the question, how can you make money off this? Well, if you're at the table early on in the project because you know how to work this stuff, you're going to add value, right? So TestFit, if you go to testfit.io, you can watch some videos on what it does. But this is a standalone application, but it's using the same kind of ideas that you would if you built your own kind of design computation engine to do this kind of stuff. But it's using program data and circulation paths and maximizing site area. And basically, the original intention was to like do pro formas very quickly, right? Oh, what's this thing going to cost with 3 underground levels of parking and 7 stories? And what's it gonna cost if we do a podium? And then what's it going to cost? And you can basically say very, very quickly, what if the site's this big? Well, what if the site's this half that big and the rest of it's a park? Like you can attach dollars to this, and it is seriously as easy as like pushing and pulling a line. But then out of that has grown something way more mature, where it's like it can automatically place firewalls because it knows the distances away from, that based on areas. It can automatically get rid of dead end corridors by automatically placing stairwells where they need to go to get people down. And so because all that stuff is constraints based, I keep going back to the constraints idea, like those are real constraints mandated by code. Those can get hard coded into the application so that you don't have to accidentally do a building that doesn't have enough stairwells, or it has dead end corridors, or you automatically know where the firewalls go. It's really cool stuff. And I think I'm really rooting for these guys because, when it comes to student housing, multifamily housing, potentially hospital patient wings, there's a lot of applications that could come out of this. And right now they're focusing on the multifamily real estate. But I think with some tweaks, this could become something available to a lot more practice markets in architecture. And I just encourage you to go watch the videos because, like what I'm telling, it doesn't do any justice. It's amazing what this stuff can do. And I think what's cool about it is like this didn't exist 5 years ago. This is now a thing, and you could use it to do very early design, make decisions very quickly based on real data inputs. You can actually plug your real program into there. And you can say this many 2 bedrooms and this many 1 bedrooms and this many 3 bedrooms. And then you could switch those numbers up and see the exact output that you would need. And it's always kind of solving it to be the most efficient. But again, it's a great starting point to at least have a baseline understanding of your project, what it's going to cost, what the layout could be. And then you could go from there. And it's just continually being developed and adding more and more features. Pretty sweet. So I'm pretty excited about that one too, even though it doesn't really even have anything to do with what our firm does. But automatically laying out parking and parking garages, like okay, it gets you 98% of the way there in 5 seconds. Like, tell me what's not appealing about that. Pretty amazing.
And I'm just looking at. I just.
If you go to their blog, you can just see all these animated GIFs that it's like, holy crap.
That's what I was looking at, is their blog, and it's amazing to just kind of like go back through and just test fit things, and it's pretty interesting.
Yep. Yeah, totally. And again, this is just an example of.
Come on, generative design. Holy crap! This is amazing.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's solving real problems. I think that's what's really exciting about it. This is computation, and there's no swoopy shapes here, right? Like this is probably a pretty good definition for what generative design or computation can do in a very practical way. And I think there's definitely kind of two different routes that people take. And a lot of times I think you have to do them at the same time. There's like the super practical internal stuff that makes what we do on a day-to-day basis easier and faster because we have to remain competitive. But clients don't care about that because they just expect it. Oh, great. You can do what everybody else can do. Fantastic. Oh, you can do it faster. Even better, right? It might become a differentiator, but it probably isn't. But then there's the stuff that's externally facing that's like, wow, check out these cutting edge capabilities that we offer. And so those are kind of the two different paths that I feel like we kind of have to straddle with this stuff. And so you can't just focus on one, right? Because if you just focus on the external facing stuff and you actually can't do it internally, then you're making false promises. If you're only focusing on the internal stuff, then you're just being as good as everybody else and you're not exciting or inspiring a clientele out there with new capabilities. You might just be doing stuff that makes you better internally, more efficient, whatever. But I don't think you can do either one of those independently. You kind of have to be able to do both.
Agreed.
And that's a tough balancing act, I think, because you've got different forces pulling at those. You've got people on the inside who want to do cool stuff, like your staff. Your staff wants to do great work, right? And then you've got your marketing department who's like, or your PICs or your BD people who are like, man, what capabilities can we show off to our client and really wow them? And it's like, so how do you balance, that kind of stuff? How do you do that with a small staff or with no staff dedicated to this stuff? How do you actually pull that off? So I think that's kind of our struggle as architects is like you said, Neil, how do you charge for this stuff? Well, are you dedicating people to define the future of your company and how they're going to do that? Or are you just continuing to do the same thing you've always done? I don't know. Every firm has to decide that for themselves.
Yes.
There you go. I mean, there was a lot there. So I don't know, man. I don't know what the answer is for firms because there is no one answer, but there's a lot of neat stuff happening. And like I said, like if let's just say this is the first time you've ever seen test fit, are you excited about it? Are you scared by it? What?
I was just looking at this is the first time. I mean, like I said, I've heard of it. I didn't really know much about it. And now I'm just looking at just the blog itself. And I'm looking at, test fit geometry that can be pushed into Dynamo and then into Revit. I mean, so you're now like, you're creating these, you're taking the information that you're creating out of test fit and you're being able, once you
it doesn't just stay there
on things that work, it doesn't just stay there. You can move it to something else. You can figure out, oh, crap, because there's so many times where I personally, get frustrated where we start to, design things in other things, in other programs that don't translate very well or don't play well with Revit. And so then we can bring a portion of it in maybe, but we have to essentially recreate it or rebuild it in Revit to make it work. And so
we just talked about two things yeah,
exactly.
Just go
the more and more you're able to get things to translate into your production software from from where I'm at in my career right now. And that's what I'm trying to do is, make the, productivity of a team, better because we're trying to get, these projects done, but we're trying to make, as we've said, in the past here, we're trying to make better buildings, but a lot of times we get bogged down into like the nitty gritty of some things, and we're like, oh, I really didn't get to that one because we just ran out of time. Well, that's not really necessarily the right answer. we ran out of time because, we created it one place and now we're trying to recreate it in another place. And, we have all these, excuses and issues and all this other stuff. But as you, are able to have all of these things with interfaces, then, you can, it makes it makes the workflow that much better.
Yeah. And I think what's really neat about that from our own internal perspective is that the way that these tools are being tied together, the way that the interoperability happens, you don't have to wait for a team member who does documentation to wait until the design is done. They actually can happen at the same time. And then you tie that into like a real-time rendering environment, and your visualization is happening at the same time. And it not only helps you from like an output deliverable standpoint and a shortening of the timeline, it actually helps you from a project understanding standpoint, because we all know that all three of those previously discrete stages unlock things that you would never before considered, right? Now, if they're all happening at the same time, they're actually informing each other in a much more distinct way. So you can be looking at the conceptual design in plan view, in elevation view, in your production environment, and at the real-time renderings at the same time, and you can make decisions that go back and modify those constraints to update the design in real time. Like, this is all happening at the same time, and I think that there is some huge implications there.
I mean, because this is like just looking at test fit, for now. I mean, this is, showing you how you can arrange different like living suites and how that fits in with parking and, but it's also generating, massing. It's generating, information, like you said, like where to locate stairs, where to locate, firewalls, where to do all of these other things, and then you take, again, it gets back to this whole massing. And you take that massing into your real-time rendering, and you start to at least see how it's, starting to like pan out. I mean, there's just so many different like options and opportunities that you can do with these things. And you're not just doing it in this like iterative process of like, I've got to do this, then next I got to do this, then next I got to do this.
It's not in series.
It's doing it all together. Yeah. Exactly. So,
and I would just to kind of maybe
advantage.
tie a bow on this at the end, maybe wrap it up here, is that what's kind of neat about this is that because of the environment that exists with software developers out there, and non-architects or people who are augmenting architects, like, you don't have to do all this in-house. Like, if this stuff scares the crap out of you, you can go outside and hire these people to come in and do it for you. And yeah, that costs money, but at the same time, like, they might have already developed it for somebody else, because that tends to be what happens, right? Is that somebody's got this idea, they go to the software developer and they say, hey, can you make it do this? And they're like, yeah, we can make it do that for you. Well, then you come along and you say, hey, have you guys ever thought about doing this? And they're like, yeah, we've done that 3 times for these other clients, and we can make that available to you too. And I think that's where I would love to see our profession get to, is the point where we're not all doing that independently, but these firms can actually go and develop this stuff and make it so that our profession is seen as more valuable, and not just individual firms is seen as the most valuable, because I don't know that ever happens. This isn't a finite game where somebody wins. I think we all kind of win projects here and there, and we all win clients here and there, but there's no winner. This is the infinite game. This is the thing that you have to keep on playing.
Yeah, I'd say the only winner in this one is if we can get our profession recognized as, bringing more value to projects, rather than, them saying, well, I don't really think that we need an architect. We can do this with a builder, or we can do this with this and that. I mean, I think you're right. I mean, if we can show the value of the profession, then we all win. Yeah. All right. Well,
cool.
We're winners.
It's always fun to show you guys some new stuff. I hope it gets you
Absolutely.
excited and not scared to death.
Very. Oh no, totally exciting. I mean, these are just it's some of the stuff you talked about. It's amazing, and it's just like, why don't we know more about it, or why aren't we doing this? I mean, holy crap, this is stuff that we can, use as great tools. So anything to help facilitate, not just making it easier, but just making it better, we should be doing.
Yeah, and then talking to everybody about it in your firm, the business people,
Yes.
the PIC,
Yeah.
like showing it off, because the more people are just aware that it exists, it just informs that.
I'm going to be making some
presentations.
Square post.
Yeah, cool.
Be doing some Square posts like, hey, did you guys know that this exists? Yeah. And, I mean, I can see how even TestFit, in a way, could help our student housing. You know, I mean, it may not, because we do things that are more like student housing, like apartment types and things like that. It's a 3-bedroom, like 3-bedroom suites and things like that, and, just scrolling through just the blog posts that they have, I mean, there are very, the densities and, being able to work with different things like that, I can totally see as something that could, like translate. So yeah.
Cool.
All right. Well, I think that's a wrap of it.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking us on this journey. It's fun.
It's a good time. I enjoy it.
Oh,
obviously.
I couldn't tell. You spoke with no passion or excitement at all.
Maybe next time.
So how you guys doing?
Oh, fine. Ready for a day off.
When I joined in on my laptop, and for some reason Microsoft had changed my login from Peter to Pedro.
As it should.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Vote for Pedro. I saw there was a Pedro Lavelle, but I figured that's not him.
Yeah, I was like, how did it change to Pedro? I don't know how that happened.
Let's actually kick it off with just the last time we hung out in New York and like kind of how you introduced this thing maybe, and then just to give a little bit of backstory and then jump into it.
Sure.
Right.
So, Evan Cormack, I believe we met up last year in New York, actually. And Evan, I think you just got back from New York.
Yep.
And I'd love to hear about that, by the way. But we had a chance to kind of go out to dinner and talk a little bit about this. Didn't get too much in detail at the time.
Didn't have many details yet, right? This is a thing that's been going on for a while now. You've had a couple of setbacks.
It is. It's something that we've been working on for about 3 years, and we were really starting to pick up steam in 2017, when in October the wildfires came through and really did some damage to Santa Rosa, and that kind of got everything just kind of got put on the back burner as our chapter took on a different role.
Well, before you get into the history of what happened, why don't you talk about what this is real quick? Give our listeners the title of what you're talking about and maybe a little bit about you and your location and stuff like that.
Sounds great. So my name is Peter Lavelle. I am the president of the AIA Redwood Empire chapter here in Northern California.
That sounds really like Return of the Jedi, by the way.
The Redwood Empire.
Yeah.
So that was our intent.
Yep.
Love it.
So it's geographically a relatively large chapter. It stretches from just north of Marin up to the Oregon border. Sort of on the western side of California here. And we are, our board is basically located in Santa Rosa. It's a city about 45 minutes north of San Francisco. And it's a great little city, small city, about 150,000 people, I think. Our chapter has about 200 people. And when I got involved with the AIA, I was a emerging professionals director. I myself, as an emerging professional, was interested in really promoting the interests of emerging professionals and associates. So I tried a couple different things, and tried a mentorship program, a number of social events, uh, but nothing really caught on. And so really started to sit down with a couple of team members and try and figure out exactly what we could do that could make a difference. And we realized that the three things that emerging professionals need or want are exposure, portfolio fodder, and engagement. And we came to the realization that an architectural installation would kind of hit all three of those parameters. If somebody could sort of build something and get in front of people, that would give them a chance to engage with the community, and would get something in their portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
So this idea of an installation kind of came about as a competition. So it, rather than just having a design competition, it's a design build competition. And so at about that time, we were also looking at who else was doing this. We were getting good ideas from other chapters, and we came across the Young Architects program, which is run out of PS1 in New York. So for those of you who don't know, PS1 is the Contemporary Arts Division of the New York Museum of Modern Art, and it's named after Public School 1 over in Queens. And when I was in New York, I got a chance to go over there and visit it. They have every year, what they have is a Young Architects program where it's an invited competition. They have a space within this museum that they allow a young firm to sort of take over and transform the space. It's an invited competition. They have 5 people go for the design, and they typically put they have them build these scale models at about 1/8 inch or something, and they put them on display in the New York MoMA. It's really interesting. I believe the winners just went up right now for this year. But I had a chance to tour it with the winners from last year, with the guys who put on the Young Architects program, and got an idea of how they put it on and what sort of parameters they use. And we started basing the idea of our competition on theirs. So the parameters they use are seating, shade, and water. And basically, they transform the space for essentially what is a large party that happens over the summer. And
Yeah,
it's
by
really
the way, Pete, like it was kind of cool because when we interviewed shop architects, they've done a installation at PS1 and it was called Dunescape, and it was pretty cool. So just to kind of tie it back into something else we've talked about on the show, and then with our trips to New York and stuff, I think it's all pretty relevant how it all ties together. So this is a cool story.
I was really impressed with how they put it together. I mean, it's pretty amazing to see what young architects can do with essentially a bare courtyard.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's
totally.
what I love about it, is it really showcases the creativity and the talent of some of these young architects, and it really serves as a launching platform for the career. So we thought it would be a great example to try here in Santa Rosa. It's the same time we were coming up with this idea. There's a square in downtown Santa Rosa that was just under construction. It's an historic square. They call it Old Courthouse Square. There used to be a courthouse there that, as local urban lore has it, it was damaged by the earthquake in '64, and they tried to demolish it after it was deemed unsafe, and the contractor went broke trying to demolish it. But anyways, the square was opened up after that, but it was bisected and had a street going right through the middle. And it took them a good 40, 50 years to redesign it and eventually merge the square back into one again. So now we have this new square downtown. And so the idea was really sort of the same as PS1, where let's give some architects an opportunity to transform the space. And so while it's not an enclosed courtyard, the parameters have to be modified a little bit. So we're kind of going on the relevant ideas of PS1, and we started calling it PSR1 for Santa Rosa, Public Space Santa Rosa. Um, quite honestly, we could not think of a better name, and that one just stuck.
It works.
You know? It does. It does. So I should say right now before I forget, there's a website for this. You go to www.aiare.org, and there's a link to this. So the parameters for it are seating, shade, and a 10 by 10 footprint. So we're anticipating there will be 3 winners. One of them will be an honor, and there's a paid stipend for the winners. The honor award gets $2,000, and the 2 merits will get $1,500 each.
Nice.
So
now is it?
We don't. Go ahead.
I was going to say, is it the intent to just build one or to potentially build all 3?
The intent is to build all 3.
Awesome.
So we will be installing these, or I should say the winners will be installing these in August of this year, August 17th to be exact. It's on a Saturday, and we have a permit with the city to go from Saturday through Wednesday. And the idea behind that is that on Wednesday there is a Wednesday night market, and so it provides the exposure we were looking for to get that kind of critical mass down there.
Nice.
We don't expect the winners to hang out. We'll go ahead and take care of the deinstallation because, we figure if somebody's driving up from Southern California or something like that, they're probably not going to be able to hang out for 4 or 5 days. But the install is on the weekend. That allows somebody to kind of come up if they're, working during the week or something like that.
Nice.
I like
so
that.
when we met in New York, you were talking about having this be a juror competition, right?
Right. So I had reached out to you guys pretty early on because I knew the most important thing about this was going to be the jury. And I thought that Archispeak really kind of spoke to me about the idea of this competition. You guys have done a lot in my eyes to sort of help out emerging professionals, myself included. And so I thought you guys would be a great jury. So I'm really looking forward to this. In July, we'll be meeting up digitally, I guess, to sort of review the entries. We also have a couple other juries because as I found putting something together like this, really is important that you have a strong team behind you and to sort of diversify ourselves a little bit. So the jury consists of you guys, and also Jenna Itzen is on board. She's the former AIACC, or I think they just changed it as the AIA California president. She's still on the board as a strategic council member, and she's the principal of Itzen Architects. So she's a great designer, great resource. I'm really looking forward to including her on this. We also have Kimberly Garza of Atlas Labs out of Sacramento, and they are a great landscape architecture firm. And again, wanted to include other emerging professionals aside from architects, but also landscape architects. As well, we are also paired up with a local structural engineering firm, MKM and Associates, who the winners will be paired up with a structural engineer sort of EP to, make sure that they get some advice on how to make these things stand up and keep them standing for the 4 or 5 days they need to be there.
Nice.
So really wanted to include as much people as possible in this.
Sounds like you have all the right components, and I think that what's cool about this is that people who decide to enter have these additional resources, from the structural engineering standpoint. And it sounds like you guys have thought through a lot of the details about taking them down afterwards so they don't have to. And it sounds like, it's more than just the bare bones. There's some things that they don't have to think about, which really kind of frees people up to be really creative and do something interesting.
I hope so. I mean, we didn't put a height restriction on it, so that might be interesting.
Nice.
Yeah.
The towers.
Yeah,
Cool.
we'll see what happens there. Um, but yeah, I'm really hoping for some interesting entries. It'll be a blind competition, so we won't have any names on it. I'm assuming people will probably team up, teams of 2 or 3.
Nice.
But it's something that I've been working on for quite a long time, and it's really got some really have some local interest here. And I think it's going to be a good thing.
Well, what I like about this, the competition in itself, but more your story behind the competition is that you've been thinking about it for a very long time. You've faced tons of challenges with, the fire and everything else that was going on, and you're still at it, and you're still sticking with it, and you haven't given up about, having this done. And now it's actually starting to come to fruition, and you're, it's about, it's your tenacity is about to pay off.
Yeah, definitely.
At a certain
Give people an idea of like what kind of adversities you've been up against. You talked about this when we were together last year, but man, it's like the devastation is unreal, and it's like no wonder that this has been pushed back a little bit.
Right. So the in October, the fires we were just talking about came through and were basically within about, as the crow flies, about a mile and a half from the town center. We lost about 6,000 homes and about 1,400 businesses. It jumped the freeway. The fire actually crossed 101. Talking about a four-lane, actually 6-lane freeway at that point. The fire crossed the freeway in the middle of the night, burned down Coffee Park. It was really kind of surprising because you never really expect a fire to kind of get into the sort of inner city areas. It's always sort of on the outskirts. But it was quite a challenge because we didn't really know. Nobody really knew what to do. It's kind of deer in the headlights, and never actually had any sort of conversation about what to do in that kind of situation. So. But we all kind of came together. The local architects just sort of working 60-hour weeks trying to get the rebuilds back on. It's pretty interesting now. We're a year and a half later, and there's a lot of rebuilding. It's really interesting. I've never seen this before in my life, where you can drive through a neighborhood and every house is under construction by a different contractor. It's not like, I've seen whole neighborhoods under construction. That's typically like a developer.
Right.
But there's just these armies of contractors just building entire neighborhoods all at the same time. And it's an amazing thing to see.
Wow.
The just sort of resiliency of the city is pretty amazing. One of our board members is a former mayor of Santa Rosa, and he lost his business. He's an architect, and they lost their business in the fire. So they had to rebuild all their files because they lost every file they had. They had to call their consultants and get backgrounds and rebuild their file base. And they are back up and running a year and a half later in a new office. And to me, it really speaks to the tenacity of the city and our board to move on from this successfully.
That's crazy.
Amazing.
6,000 houses is, like, obviously this has probably sprung a bunch of new businesses, but I'm sure a lot of businesses went away too. So it's just like a complete sea change in kind of the fabric, but then you also still have the people who've hung on and enabled this rebuilding to happen. So it seems like, man, this competition, this event where the culmination of all this in the square is just going to be a really big deal and a really good time.
Yeah.
I think so. It really took on another added layer to it because we found after the fires that there was just a lack of help here. I mean, we were all struggling to kind of get through this. And so this really became about also creating awareness of Santa Rosa and our great little city up here so that, we can, get more people up here to help out, hopefully. because it is a great place to live, and so that's really what I'm hoping this competition will help out with.
I mean, that's exactly what I was thinking. It was, the competition can almost serve as a punctuation of saying we're still here.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Come see who we are.
Yeah.
And it's we've all been just sort of uh, working so hard that it's really a great chance for us to kind of come together again as a community and just kind of celebrate the awesome thing we do, right? Like we all do this because we love what we do.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something I'm really looking forward to.
Cool. Well, we're really happy to participate and help, get the word out definitely about this. And so can you give everybody the website again that they go to find more information about the competition?
Right. So you can head to our AIA chapter's website, and it's AIARE.org, as in AIA Redwood Empire.
Okay.
There will be a link on there to the competition's own webpage.
Cool.
So I can give you a couple of rough dates here, but the registration is due on June 22nd. The actual submissions are due June 29th. We'll be announcing the winners in July, on July 13th. And the install is about 5 weeks later on August 17th.
Wow. It's fast.
It is.
It's going to be here before we know it.
Yeah.
It is. We're kind of bookended by the Wednesday night market. Again, we wanted to get that critical mass of people, and this is the second to last Wednesday night market of the year, but it was the latest one we could get a permit for. So
Very cool. Awesome. So that's going to be huge.
I hope so.
Good. All right, so listeners, get out there and put your thinking caps on, because this is going to be a fantastic competition for a great cause. It's great exposure. It's all the things that you could possibly want, I think. And I mean, I think it's kind of a genius move for you to do it as design build, because I think that kind of experience. I mean, Pete, we've done stuff like that before in the past, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the old FEMA shelters for Cal Poly. I mean, there's just there's so many things I can think of. The work that we did in design build, the stuff we've done at, Pete, just so the listeners know, Pete and I have worked together at, I guess it's really technically 3 different places. And so just we have a long history of actually making stuff too. And I think Pete and I have always kind of felt like that is a critical component to being an architect, is actually building stuff too. And so this is a cool opportunity to do that.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah. Design build has always been something that's sort of near and dear to my heart. So I'm a very tactile person, and learn by doing, as they say.
Yeah, totally. And again, like to have the resources of the structural engineer, and I think thinking about it from a architectural and a landscape perspective, the night market, like all these things, these great inputs. I think that is all really going to make it even better. So good for you guys for putting all that together and putting together a great jury. Not just saying that because it's us, but looking forward to
if you do say so yourself.
Yeah, no, but I mean, Janet Itzen and
Kimberly.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is going to be fantastic. And I think you're going to get some neat, I'm hoping we're going to get some great competition entries to judge and jury, and really looking forward to this event. It's going to be good. Very good.
Great. Well, thanks a lot, guys. I really appreciate it.
Cool. And are we going to see you in Vegas?
I will not be there, but one of the committee members that's helping with this will be out there. His name's Giuliano, and he's got some sort of tickets, some printed tickets he'll be handing out about this that have more information on it.
Nice. Well, let's make sure that we hook up with him.
Yeah.
And we'll be there. And I'm sure you're slammed because of all the work that you're doing up there in Santa Rosa. But thanks for coming on the show and talking about this. And again, it's going to be here before we know it, but it's good to get the word out about it now so that people can start thinking about it and check out the website and see what the constraints are and come up with some cool ideas.
Definitely. Well, thanks for having me on, guys, and I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to it as well.
Thanks, man.
All right.